your lean mass or your muscles are your health pension for when you age. And this is because as we age, it's harder to actually build muscle, and not because you become less active or you don't have the strength, but it's a process that involves lots of factors.
Welcome to the Fat Emperor podcast. I'm your host, Ivor Cummins. We're supported by the Irish Heart Disease Awareness Charity, which advocates a simple CT scan to reveal your CAC score. So, know your score and take action to prevent that premature heart attack. Everything you need to know will be right here. I'm here in Low Carb Universe in Mallorca, and I had the pleasure of listening earlier on today to an excellent talk by Luis Villasenor.
Yes.
Great to meet you, Louis.
Likewise, Ivor.
Yeah, I think we met last year in San Diego briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
But I really enjoyed getting to hear your talk.
Yeah, with Jeff Gerber.
Oh, good old Jeff Gerber. Yeah, shout out to Jeff there. So, today's talk was fantastic because I'm into low carb and keto to a point and fasting and all this stuff and the science. But I'm not really so much into exercise and muscle building. However, I found it fascinating today that you completely debunked the myth that you need carbohydrate to raise insulin to help with anabolic muscle building. So maybe we could talk a little around that, around some of the key points as to why that's a myth.
Well, here's the deal. Normally in keto land, or in the low carb communities, we have this belief first that protein has to be kept within a certain range, because protein is turns into glucose, or as some people say, into chocolate cake, which sadly is not true. Otherwise, well, it would be incredible. But also among fitness communities, there is a lot of keto hate, mainly because a lot of people are doing it misguided in a way, or are chasing fat bombs and so on, which is very much because of, again, a little bit of misinformation. So when people say that it's not possible to build muscle on keto, well, I know that's not true, mainly because I've done it myself for the last 23 years. I've been on ketosis for the last 19 years. I've been strength training for 23. And yeah, I started training not on keto, but I built basically all my physique while following a ketogenic diet. So we have to understand that the main driver for muscle building is, of course, strength training. If you don't strength train, you're not going to be building a considerable amount of lean mass, because you need a stimulus. Then protein is the building block. Okay. We have a train here, smart trolley.
This is the local tram in Port de Soleil, so it'll pass in just a moment.
Yes. But I think the audio is okay. So I was saying that protein is a main building block for all our body, and this is super important for muscles, right? So what normally the fitness community says is that you require carbohydrates because of energy, first and foremost, and then because carbohydrates raise insulin, and insulin is an anabolic hormone. Without insulin, you will not be able to shuttle nutrients, mainly protein, into your muscles so that they, get bigger. Basically, that's the common myth. That's the common saying. Another myth is that you need carbohydrates to replenish glycogen. And if anybody doesn't know, glycogen is, in a way, glucose stored in your muscles, and it gives you energy to move and to train harder and with more intensity. So that's a twofold myth. You need the energy, the insulin, and basically that's it. And protein is just to build muscles. So there are quite some studies. One of the most known is from Staples. He did it, I think, at 2011. And he has a group of bodybuilders, or people who are training, ingest a beverage made out of protein, 25 grams of whey shake, plus about 50 grams of maltodextrin. And then he has another group that they just have the whey shake. And what he found is that there's no difference in the insulin response from the group that just had the whey to the group that just had a combination of the whey shake plus the maltodextrin. So what he found out is basically that you don't need the carbohydrates to raise a little bit the insulin to an important amount as to elicit, the muscle building response.
Yeah, and that was pretty clear from that study alone. I mean, one study doesn't make, a complete proof, but in a sense that one was so clear with 25 gram protein alone versus 25 plus 50 of super glucose, and no difference in what they claim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we know that for some people, you can see it very clearly in diabetics, they need to manage their insulin when they ingest protein, right? Well, why? Because it's raising a little bit insulin. So again, it's a moot point to say that it doesn't happen. You don't need to go super high on insulin, you just need it a little bit. And then insulin by itself in the context of strength training and muscle building is not really anabolic. It's more so anti-catabolic. So when your purpose is to build a muscle, what you do is you do strength training with the idea of breaking down a little bit your muscle fibers, creating micro tears in your muscles, and then this creates an hormone signal to your body to make your muscle stronger. And then you ingest protein, which is what is going to be used the amino acids to repair. And then the purpose of insulin here is that because it's an anti-catabolic, in the end it helps you that the end result of this muscle building process is greater. Basically, it's very much like an equation. You have a muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. By having protein and insulin around your workout, you make your muscles be bigger. Basically, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want insulin too high, and it won't be too low in the absence of carbohydrate.
Exactly. It's just about right. Now here's a disclaimer. This is just to build muscle. We're not saying in the case of traditional bodybuilding where you want to grow super huge, right? That's another thing altogether. And I'm not saying that keto will get you to to Mr. Olympia levels. If you want to get to that level of musculature, well, probably you're gonna have to do the same things that these guys do, which is probably train like an animal, eat like an animal, and that requires a huge amount of carbohydrates, probably use exogenous help like they do, and have the same genetics like these guys do. But again, for what the average Joe actually wants, which is just to have big pecs and a good physique, it's more than enough.
Yeah, and the average Joe also generally will want a lovely physique, looks great, they're not fat, they'd have no belly, and also they want health and longevity.
Exactly.
Whereas the bodybuilders who go for Mr. Universe and what they do, going through so much carbohydrate, and you could question their longevity potential.
Exactly. They look good on the outside, but they may not be healthy in the inside. And it's very similar to what happens to a lot of people who do marathons and runners, which they carb load and so on. And what happens with them is that they end up diabetic, even if that they are so active and they exercise a lot, because they are not doing things optimally. Well, they be winning races, but their goal is to win the race, and their health came in second term, right? Yeah. This is, in a way, what I'm explaining as to have a little bit of everything. You're gonna get health, or you're gonna maintain your health, but you're also going to be able to build a decent amount of muscle. And again, when I say a decent amount, is basically what every guy really aspires.
Yeah, exactly. And just going on to another point then, the importance of protein in your diet as you get older, and the whole point you made earlier about building muscle for huge future benefits, and that will require adequate protein.
Exactly. It's I like to say, and this is how I came to explain it to clients as to make the point, is that muscle, your lean mass or your muscles are your health pension for when you age. And this is because as we age, it's harder to actually build muscle, and not because you become less active or you don't have the strength, but it's a process that involves lots of factors. So one is that you become leucine resistant. Leucine is one of the 3 branched chain amino acids. Is the one that actually signals your body to induce muscle protein synthesis, to start building muscle. So as we age, depending on various factors, some people say after 35, some after 45, we really don't know exactly. We need more leucine to generate this signal. So this means you actually need to ingest more protein. Now, and this may sound a little bit counterproductive for people who want to do keto or are doing keto, because we've been told that you need to keep your protein low because insulin or gluconeogenesis, but you have to see which is the less of the devils here. You want to probably do keto and have high levels of ketones. Okay, what is the purpose? You want to do keto for fat loss, then I go by this saying, you chase results, not ketones. Ketosis is a tool, but it should not be the end. Like you should not be really doing ketosis just for the sake of doing it. You are doing it with a purpose. So if you're losing body fat, but you are probably not having super high ketones, really it doesn't really matter that much, because you're getting the results you want. Even if your protein is probably higher, you're going to be building muscle, and again, your muscles are your health pension. And they're not just for looking, muscly and having abs. No, the more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are. Your muscles are like a sponge for insulin. That's one thing. Also, nowadays, it's being muscle size, or the more lean mass you have, is being considered in the medical community as a sign of metabolic health. So, in some places, some doctors even know when a patient comes and the patient is more muscular, has a higher lean mass than average, they have a bigger chance of survival when they have or develop a chronic illness, because again, it means that your body is going to be better adapted to heal itself. Your muscles are they're not the amino acid pool, but your body can take amino acids from your muscles if it needs to.
Yeah, and absolutely. When you starve, eventually the final reservoir is the muscle is taken to protect the organs.
Exactly. This is what happens, for example, when you're fasting. That people say you don't lose muscle when you're fasting. Well, probably at the beginning, not so much. But the human growth hormone increase that you see in the studies when people fast is not really to protect your lean mass, but to protect your muscles. And the increase is just your body is shaving off the amino acids from your muscles and transporting it to your organs. Like, the body really doesn't care if you're strong or not, or you have big muscles. They're just a reservoir. Like, it's great that you are big, but if you're in a difficult situation where there's no food, the first things that will go is your muscles, right?
Yeah,
you have to protect your organs.
Absolutely. Brain and vital organs come first. They're always going to be served. And the body also, I guess, knows that when some food comes around, it can easily rebuild back whatever's been used.
Exactly. In a way, you can build back muscle, but it's not that easy. It's easier if you already had it. If you, for example, you trained when you were young and you stopped training, or you're just maintaining, you already generated that strength and that those muscles. You grow your muscles. There's a thing called micronuclei. So you acquire new muscle fibers and you make them bigger. You can make them smaller, but once you acquire them, it's easier to go back. And that happens again with training and solid nutrition. That's why you see some bodybuilders, some of them that do not use exogenous steroids and so on. You can see them go, smaller and then bigger very easily when they stop training. Or some athletes that they maintain a very fit physique all throughout their lives. They are just doing enough to maintain, and if they train again harder, like when they were younger, they can gain it very easily. Probably not go back to their peak, but they have this great looking physique. But if you start training when you're older, it's going to be much more difficult, because again, you are leucine resistant. You have lots of disadvantages. Your bones are not not have the bone density to support and to help you probably already have joint issues, and this is also very important for strength training.
And of course, yeah, people in that situation are going to be more prone to injuries and kinds of challenges.
Again, muscles are very much like an armor. They protect you from diseases, they protect you from diabetes, they protect you from, like, if you fall, right?
Hey guys, just a quick break to remind you that this podcast is only possible due to funding from the Irish Heart Disease Awareness Charity and its founder David Bobbitt. David discovered he had massive heart disease in 2012 and could only do so by getting a 5-minute calcification scan and CAC score. It enabled him to take action to stop the disease process and to save his own life. Now he is spending millions to help others do likewise. All we ask is to help get the message out on the power of CAC, watch the Widowmaker movie linked at the end of this podcast, and share it as widely as you can. Thank you, and now we return to the conversation.
Yeah, and ironically, actually, on a negative side, adipocytes, fat cells, it's similar. You build up your number of fat cells and you may lose weight,
but they stay.
They stay. It's easy enough to fill them back up again.
Yeah, there's a study that says that if you were overweight when you're young, it's basically a death sentence or a fat sentence in a way. It's going to be much harder to lose weight, and you're probably going to be overweight all your life, because you created those adipocytes. And that, versus if you get fat when you are, let's say, over 25 or over your 30s, because you're really not creating new adipocytes, they're just making the ones you have larger. Of course, you can create some of them, but not at the same rate.
Yeah.
And I think that the lifespan of each adipocyte is about 10 or 15 years. So even if you lose weight, they are still there, and they can be refilled very easily.
Yes, indeed. This is the challenge of losing weight. Another point, I love protein-sparing modified fast, and myself and Dr. Gerber featured it in the book, and we tried to explain with tables how you could be on what appears to be a highish carb and very high protein percentage diet, but because you're losing weight and burning body fat, you're actually really on a high fat diet if you include the fat you're burning.
Of course.
So it'd be great for you just to talk around a little around the PSMF and how important that concept is.
Okay, so a PSMF is a protein sparing modified fast. So it's called a fast because, talking about fasting again, the easiest way to lose weight is not eat anything, right? So just don't eat anything, you're gonna lose weight eventually, 1, 2, 3 days, whatever. But you lose weight, but also not just body fat, you also are going to lose lean mass. Again, even if we say that fasting is protective, etc., like you're gonna end up losing some lean mass. And the goal would be to lose just body fat, but that's really impossible. So what would be the best way to maintain as much muscle mass or lean mass as possible while maximizing fat loss? Well, this is where PSMF comes. You ingest an adequate amount of protein. In the case of PSMF, usually it's much higher than you would normally eat. And then you eat probably a decent amount of vegetables, more so for vitamins and minerals, for nutrient density, and also to help with satiety and a little bit of variation, although really this is something that depends on the person for adherence. And then you could theoretically go as low fat as you actually wanted. You could go zero fat if you could, but you do need a little amount of fat because some nutrients are, vitamin D, for example, are liposoluble, so you actually need some fat, dietary fat, for them to be absorbed. And for some hormonal issues, again, one day where you go 100% protein, nothing happens, probably 2 or 3 the same. But if you're going to do a PSMF for about 1 week or 2 weeks, then probably you need to consider ingesting at least some fish oil, let's say 5 to 10 grams, or maybe 1 egg, so that you get a little bit of the egg yolk. It really depends on how strict or how fast you want the fat loss to occur. So again, the degree varies with the person. Some people can do what I suggest normally is 40-45 grams of dietary fat, and with that you probably won't have any issue. And then you calculate your protein upward, and veggies very much as to be a filler, but prefer nutrient dense vegetables, green vegetables like spinach, zucchini or whatever, but again with the focus on nutrient density.
Yes, the key point that Marty, actually, I know you have connections to Marty, and he has some amazing data put together for the insulinogenic index and protein versus carb, and also nutrient density is a huge thing. If everyone just ate for nutrient density and maybe left aside everything else, that alone would be a huge step forward for modern people.
The thing with if you eat for nutrient density, you can basically not be hungry. It's very easy to how do you say, shave off hunger when you eat for nutrient density. Why? Because this is a theory I have. I read some papers on it, but again, it's not 100%. We cannot say that it's true 100%. When you are devoid of certain nutrients, and let's think from an evolutionary standpoint, what is hunger? Well, a signal for that your body sends for you to eat, to acquire nutrients from the environment, right? So certain animals, in the case of us humans, well, we require certain nutrients. A dog requires a certain specific amount of nutrients, humans a certain amount, which may be similar, but there are some differences. And where we normally lived, or animals, for example, in their ecosystem, they would find their natural nutrients, right? Just from eating whatever it was available at their natural ecosystem. We humans, well, we are highly adaptable and we move. So it's not just about calories. We could be eating a super high caloric diet that is devoid of nutrients, and taking out the insulin thing when you're always hungry. I've also seen with some persons, and in my case, where when you are missing certain nutrients, you get cravings or you get hungry, and your body really cannot tell you. Like, we've all seen these charts in the internet, like if you are craving chocolate, you need magnesium. If you're craving, and which is mostly bullshit, right? There's no real way to know exactly if that's the thing. There may be some cravings that are really related, but the most classic one that I can say that it's BS, for example, is women that are on their period and they crave chocolate, right? And that's more a social construct, because I can guarantee you that a woman in the Amazon never thinks of chocolate, right? Yeah. She's never had one. So probably it's more so a social construct. But again, we really don't know. Our body cannot tell us exactly what we're craving. So when you're hungry, sometimes your body is sending you the signal that you're missing a certain nutrient, a key nutrient that your body needs. But even if you eat, let's say, junk food that is devoid of those nutrients, you're still going to be hungry. And this is one of the reasons, again, it's a theory of mine, that what people keep on eating and eating and eating, versus if you eat a nutrient-dense diet, even if you are on much less calories, even on a deficit, you can be satiated all day long.
Yeah. And certainly a calorie is not a calorie.
Of course.
That is absurd. I have one anecdotal one I'll just mention, because I always think of this one. My fifth son, my youngest son, when he was very young, he used to always go and grab butter and eat butter directly. It was weird. But oddly enough, a few months later, he became very ill and we had to bring him to hospital, and they found out he was profoundly D deficient. So I often wondered, and I know generally all that stuff and chocolate and whatever, it's mostly crap, but I would say the body has some tenuous signals to direct you towards nutrient-dense foods.
Yeah, I know that there's that's why I say it's a theory, and I read some papers that support it, but then there are also some, like, we have instinct. Yeah. And animals know exactly what they need to eat, and that's something that we've lost as humans, because we play with everything and we change the rules for everything. Yeah. But again, now we are so disconnected that we just get the signal to eat and we grab everything, but we're really not supplying the nutrients that we need.
And if you combine that with the hyper palatable modern foods,
well, that's when you get like
explosive.
these, like some people say they're addicted to sugar. I'd say more so that just being addicted to sugar, because I've never seen someone, grab a spoonful of sugar and, get their fix on it.
Yeah.
They're addicted to the feeling, they probably how pizza tastes and feels, and that thing, probably lights their certain areas of their brain.
So a mixture of inappropriate hunger from lack of nutrient-dense food combined with what you've just mentioned and some other things, and we've got an explosion, which is what we see every day.
Yeah, and again, like you said, food nowadays is engineered to make you eat more, because the focus for the companies is to sell more.
Yes, and their buddies in the pharmaceutical industry also benefit on the back end from all the disease, but it's not a conspiracy. It's just the way business seeks to build more business.
I don't think it's we have like people in black robes, doing we're killing every. No, it's not like that. But in the end, it turned out like this because companies are living entities, and they have to survive, and they have to make money for the stakeholders and the shareholders, and that's how it is. And they just have to sell. Like I was telling you yesterday, I worked for a big beverage company, and I knew how it works. You work very much as well on corporate, and profit is profit, and you have that to deliver, right? And well, in beverage, you have this. I worked at marketing, and we had this theory that was called stomach space. So the idea is to get the stomach of a client or of a person. How do you fill that stomach with as much product from our company? So either you make them ingest more, or you develop more products so that you will not buy from other companies, right? So it's a combination of both. Okay, let's make all the products so that people use all our products, but also, okay, so the normal person would eat every 3 hours. Well, let's make a treat so they eat every 2.5. And how do you make them eat more? And so it's a snowball.
Yeah, and that the second order effect of where they steadily become more and more hungry is then further long-term growth. So yeah, I mean, business has to, and survival for business now is not just mere survival. You need growth to survive.
It's not about just profit. They rate companies on the percentage of growth year by year, and how do you manage to grow 5% or 20% year after year? It becomes unsustainable.
Yeah, an endless wheel. So we might finish actually, because I know the light is fading. We have to get back to the conference.
Yes.
On the protein and cancer, there was a lot of fuss around a year ago with some significant figures in the field talking about protein excess causing cancer. And it's gone a little quiet now, I've noticed. What do you think of that whole thing?
I think that we really need, there's a lot to understand. We really don't know all the mechanisms on cancer, and very much like there are some theories that support that a ketogenic diet may help with some types of cancer. Not all cancer feeds on carbs. There are some types that may feed also on fat or ketones even. So we don't have the whole picture. And my thoughts on this regard with protein is that it may really not be the protein, but the whole enchilada, like we say in Mexico. It's not. Don't blame the protein for what the fries and the soda and the bun did. It's not the steak. It's not the hamburger. It's everything else that comes on the MAC trio, right?
Yeah, and the whole talk of MTOR and protein, yes, technically directly activates MTOR, amino acids, but MTOR is massively activated by high insulin, IGF-1, and many other things. It's like a central processor. So I can understand why they'd like to link protein because of the mTOR link to cancer.
But also exercise increases mTOR. And then we were just in this talk in the morning, and exercise also helps with cancer. So, prevent cancer. So again, you cannot, like, there are so many moving pieces, and you cannot say, oh, it's a protein. Well, maybe on certain conditions and for certain phenotypes it could be, but maybe for the overall population it actually is the opposite. Probably having a higher lean mass, again, with a healthy diet and low on processed foods, nutrient dense, and with a little bit of exercise, probably that's much better. So we really don't know exactly, what when we were talking about this yesterday as well. Oh, a diet high in protein. Okay, what is high? There's really no clear definition of what is high. Some people go by percentages, but if we go by percentages, for some person that could be 200 grams of protein, or for some other could be, 50 grams, depending on the amount of calories they are eating.
Yeah. And there may be people who have sensitivities to certain foods. I know I've had the discussion before on ApoE4 people who have heart disease. Maybe animal protein, animal fat in excess could actually end up driving up insulin or changing cholesterol ratios in a less favorable way. But again, that's a very specific scenario.
It's plausible.
Yeah, whereas especially as you age, as you say, protein is extremely important for health and longevity. So we got to be careful about these messages floating around.
It's people get very afraid and start to follow certain recommendations without actually going in depth and trying to understand. And I know it's super confusing, but just because a headline said, like a few years ago, where they showed this that red meat causes cancer and not a lot of illness. But again, it was a confounder study where, people, were eating red meat, but also were unhealthy and were smoking cigarettes. And, it was the lifestyle, not really the red meat by itself. Because you also had, on the other side, people who ate red meat, but were, people who practice exercise and lived a healthy lifestyle and didn't get anything, right?
Absolutely, and this is the endless pain I feel when I see these association studies in the media, and they have hazard ratios of 1.13, and are utterly confounded, as you say, with smoking, with unhealthy user bias. It's crazy, but we're going to keep seeing them, I think, as industry probably likes those studies to keep things confusing, like the tobacco industry used to do.
Well, and there's currently, I think, a propaganda war, an info war against low carb diets, and I do think it has a little bit to do with some interests being touched, because again, we were talking before, it's about profit, and when people start talking with their money, companies see their shares go down.
Oh, yeah.
So either you create a product to benefit that market, or you lose money, right?
So yeah, and creating misinformation is the easiest way to deal with something. You don't even need to create false information, just create doubt, confusion, and stop any growing movements. So anyway, hopefully that won't happen. The low carb and keto are here to stay and grow. And right now, Luis, to be honest, I'm just looking at you there, and I gotta go work on my arms.
I'll get you some ideas to train.
Excellent. So Ketogains, Luis here, and we'll catch up at the next conference.
Likely so. Probably in Low Carb Denver.
Low Carb Denver, yeah, in March 2019. It's going to be
surely
huge.
Be there.
Yeah, Low Carb Denver.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my subscribe button in the middle of the screen, a free viewing of the Widowmaker movie on the far right, and myself and Dr. Gerber's book, Eat Rich, Live Long, on the left. Otherwise, please do subscribe to the audio podcast. Thanks.